What if I told you that the phrase "just one drink" is one of the most sophisticated lies your brain tells itself? Not because you're weak, not because you lack willpower, but because your neurology has been hijacked by a substance that literally rewrites the rules of decision-making. You've probably said it, maybe even today. Just one drink. It sounds so reasonable, so controlled, so safe. But here's what nobody tells you. There's no such thing as just one drink to your brain. And once you understand why, everything changes. Let's start with what you've been taught about alcohol. You've been told it's about moderation, about balance, about being a responsible adult who can have just one and walk away. The cultural narrative is seductive in its simplicity. Good people control their drinking. Problem drinkers don't. This story feels true because it puts you in control. It makes you the protagonist of your own drinking story. You're not someone who has a problem. You're someone who can make conscious, adult decisions about when and how much to drink. I used to believe this story completely. I thought just one drink was a statement of intention, maybe even a badge of self-discipline. I had no idea I was negotiating with a substance that doesn't play by the rules of logic or willpower. But what if everything you've been told about just one is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how alcohol actually works in your brain? What if the very concept of just one drink is neurologically impossible? Here's what happens in your brain the moment alcohol enters your system. Within minutes, alcohol begins disrupting the delicate balance of neurotransmitters that govern decision-making, impulse control, and rational thought. Think of your prefrontal cortex as the CEO of your brain. It's the part that makes executive decisions, weighs consequences, and says things like just one drink tonight. But alcohol acts like a targeted strike on the CEO's office. It doesn't just impair judgment. It specifically attacks the neural circuits responsible for stopping behavior once it's started. Meanwhile, alcohol floods your reward system with dopamine, the same chemical involved in every addiction known to science. Your brain begins to prioritize alcohol above almost everything else, including your own stated intentions about having just one. Here's the part that changed everything for me. The decision to have a second drink isn't made by the same brain that decided to have the first one. The first drink chemically alters your brain's ability to stick to your original plan. You're literally not the same person making the second decision. Scientists call this alcohol myopia, the narrowing of attention and decision-making that occurs under the influence. Your brain becomes incapable of the kind of long-term thinking that made just one seem like a reasonable plan in the first place. But here's where it gets really interesting. This neurological hijacking doesn't just happen to people with alcohol use disorder. It happens to everyone, every single time they drink. The only difference is how much alcohol it takes to overwhelm your particular brain's executive function. Now, let's talk about why just one drink feels so important to defend. It's not really about the alcohol at all. It's about who you think you are. Just one drink is identity protection. It's the difference between seeing yourself as someone who drinks occasionally and someone who might have a problem with alcohol. It's the thin line between feeling in control and feeling out of control. It's the story that lets you continue drinking without questioning whether drinking serves you. Think about how much mental energy you've spent negotiating with yourself about alcohol, the internal calculations. I only had 2 drinks last night, so I can have 3 tonight. I didn't drink Monday through Wednesday, so weekend drinks don't count. I only drink wine, not hard liquor. I only drink after 5 p.m. I only drink socially. These aren't just random thoughts. They're the elaborate defense system your brain creates to protect your drinking while maintaining your self-image as a controlled, rational person. Just one drink is the cornerstone of this entire psychological structure. But what if I told you that needing to create rules about your drinking is already a sign that alcohol has more power over you than you realize? People who have a neutral relationship with a substance don't need to create elaborate systems to manage their consumption. You don't hear people say, "I'm only going to eat 1 apple today," or "I need to limit myself to just 1 glass of water." They eat apples when they want apples. They drink water when they're thirsty. No negotiation, no internal debate, no identity crisis if they have more than they planned. The fact that just one drink requires so much mental effort to maintain is actually evidence that alcohol is not a neutral substance for your brain. It's a substance that demands management, negotiation, and constant vigilance. And even then, it often wins. Let's dive deeper into why just one so often becomes just a few more. This isn't about weakness or lack of character. This is about how alcohol chemically disrupts your brain's ability to stick to predetermined limits. Every drink you consume creates what neuroscientists call disinhibition. Your brain's natural brakes start to fail. The voice that says that's enough gets quieter with each sip. Meanwhile, the voice that says another one sounds good gets louder and more compelling. But here's the truly insidious part. Alcohol doesn't just make you want more alcohol in the moment. It creates lasting changes in your brain that make future just one drink scenarios increasingly difficult to navigate successfully. Each time you drink, your brain creates stronger neural pathways associated with alcohol consumption. Think of these pathways like walking trails in the forest. The more you use them, the more defined they become. Eventually, they become the easiest path for your brain to follow. This is why people often find that their ability to stick to just one gets worse over time, not better. They're not becoming weaker or less disciplined. Their brains are simply following increasingly well-worn neural pathways that lead from one drink to several drinks. There's also something called the abstinence violation effect. When you break your own rule about having just one, your brain doesn't just register disappointment. It actually triggers a neurochemical response that makes you more likely to continue drinking. It's as if your brain says, "Well, I already broke the rule, so I might as well really break it." This is why just one drink often becomes a night of regret. It's not a failure of willpower. It's a predictable neurological response to a substance that rewrites the rules of decision-making in real. Now let's talk about why we want just one drink in the first place. Most people don't reach for alcohol because they love the taste or because they're physically thirsty. They reach for it because they want to change how they feel. Maybe you're stressed from work and want to unwind. Maybe you're anxious about social situations and want to feel more confident. Maybe you're sad or bored or celebrating or grieving. The common thread is that alcohol promises emotional regulation, a quick, reliable way to shift from one feeling state to another. Just one drink feels like a controlled way to access this emotional regulation without going overboard. It's an attempt to get the benefits of alcohol's mood-altering effects, while avoiding the costs of drinking too much. But here's what nobody tells you about alcohol and emotions. Alcohol doesn't actually solve emotional problems. It postpones them. Every time you use alcohol to change how you feel, You're essentially borrowing happiness from tomorrow and paying it back with interest. When you drink to relax, you're not actually relaxing. You're chemically suppressing your nervous system. When the alcohol wears off, your nervous system rebounds, often leaving you more anxious than when you started. When you drink to feel confident, you're not building real confidence. You're masking insecurity with a chemical that wears off, leaving the insecurity intact. This creates a cycle where you need alcohol more and more to feel normal. Not because you're addicted, but because alcohol keeps disrupting your brain's natural ability to regulate emotions. Just one drink becomes not a treat or a choice, but a maintenance dose to feel like yourself. The cruelest irony is that the very thing you're using to manage difficult emotions is actually making those emotions more difficult to manage over time. Your brain starts to forget how to handle stress, anxiety, sadness, or boredom without chemical assistance. We need to talk about how just one drink became such a socially acceptable concept in the first place. You've been conditioned to believe that moderate drinking is not just acceptable, but admirable. Just one drink is held up as the gold standard of responsible adult behavior. But think about this. When did we decide that regularly consuming a neurotoxic substance was a sign of maturity and self-control? When did we start celebrating people's ability to moderate their consumption of something that chemically impairs judgment and decision-making? The just one drink narrative serves a massive industry that profits from your consumption while also profiting from your guilt about consuming too much. It's the perfect psychological trap. Drink enough to stay in the market, but not so much that you question the market itself. You've been taught that the problem isn't alcohol. It's people who can't handle alcohol properly. This keeps you focused on managing your consumption rather than questioning why you feel the need to consume at all. But what if the real question isn't how can I stick to just one drink, but why do I feel like I need even one drink? What if the desire for just one is actually your brain telling you that alcohol has become more important to your emotional and social functioning than you've admitted to yourself? I'm not saying everyone who drinks has a drinking problem. I'm saying that anyone who has to work hard to stick to predetermined limits around a substance might want to examine why that substance holds so much power in their life. Here's the moment everything clicked for me. I realized that just one drink wasn't a statement of control. It was evidence of how much control I'd already lost. The fact that I needed to negotiate with myself about alcohol, create rules about alcohol, and spend mental energy managing alcohol meant that alcohol was managing me. People who have a truly neutral relationship with substances don't need to create elaborate systems to manage their consumption. They don't have internal debates about how much is too much. They don't need to prove to themselves or others that they can stick to arbitrary limits. The just one drink mindset keeps you trapped in a cycle of attempting control rather than questioning why you need control in the first place. It's like being proud of your ability to juggle flaming torches instead of asking why you're juggling fire at all. When I stopped trying to perfect my ability to have just one drink and started asking why I wanted to drink at all, everything changed. I discovered that most of my reasons for wanting alcohol were actually reasons to avoid alcohol. I wanted to relax, but alcohol was making me more anxious overall. I wanted to be social, but alcohol was making me less present in conversations. I wanted to celebrate, but alcohol was making me forget the things I was celebrating. I wanted to cope with difficult emotions, but alcohol was making those emotions more difficult to cope with. So here's what I want you to consider. What if just one drink isn't a goal worth achieving? What if it's a symptom of a relationship with alcohol that's already more complicated than it needs to be? You don't have to quit drinking forever to benefit from this realization. You just have to get honest about what just one drink really represents in your life. Is it freedom, or is it a very sophisticated form of bondage? The most radical thing you can do isn't to get better at limiting your drinking. It's to question why you feel the need to drink at all. What would change in your life if you didn't have to spend mental energy negotiating with a substance that promises relief but delivers dependence? I'm not here to shame anyone's choices. I'm here to illuminate choices you might not realize you're making. Every time you say just one drink, you're choosing to engage with a substance that will immediately begin working to undermine your ability to stick to that limit. You have more power than you know, but that power comes from understanding what you're really dealing with, not from trying to outsmart a substance that's specifically designed to overwhelm your brain's decision-making capacity. If this resonates with you, if you've ever found yourself wondering why just one so often becomes more than one, you're not alone. Drop a comment about your experience with the just one drink mentality. Let's start a conversation about what conscious choice really looks like. And if you want to explore what life might feel like without having to manage your relationship with alcohol, hit subscribe, because the most beautiful thing about clarity is that it gives you the power to choose from a place of wisdom rather than negotiation. The question isn't whether you can have just one drink. The question is whether you want to live in a world where you have to.